Good Warm Trophy Kids presented by Bad News Media. It is the college football betting show. As always, I'm your host, Nate. We've got some fantastic games on deck here. This is the Week 7 slate, one of the most anticipated weeks on the college football schedule this season. Next week's also got some fantastic games, so make sure you plan accordingly. But good to go ahead and break down some of the biggest matchups this week, give out some bets like we always do, or like I always do. The NFL show is out, so hopefully you check that out as well. Me and my co-host, Michael, have been rolling there. Right now on the college football side of things, it is a record of 22, 20, and 1 on bets given out on this show and social media. So make sure you're following us at Trophy Kids Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. You can follow myself, The Trophy Kid, on all those platforms as well to get the additional betting picks. Hopefully we deliver a winning season once again. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, have yet to have a losing season by the end of the season, but it's definitely been a difficult one this season. It feels harder to get really good data points on some of these teams. So rankings may be a little off right now. Evaluations, I think, are starting to really get solid, though. I'm starting to feel like I have a very good grasp on what these teams are this season. And that brings us into the top 12 through 7 weeks. This is how I see the top 12 in college football right now. Texas remains my number 1 team in the country. I don't have to move them. They didn't play last week. They've got a tough matchup against Oklahoma from a defensive standpoint. Oklahoma's defense is very tough. We'll break down that game in more detail, but should be a good data point for this Texas offense once again. Ohio State sits at my number 2 team in the country. This is a data point that may change. Like this evaluation, I don't think there's a huge problem if you want to switch Texas and Ohio State. I'm not going to have a huge argument over it. I think that's totally fair. They are neck and neck. I personally think Texas is the more complete team, but that evaluation may change here based on this Oregon game that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. So this is a very fluid ranking and system. I have Oregon and Penn State 3 and 4. I feel like I'm a little bit forced into this one. I don't know if I buy Oregon solely at 3. They were my number 3 team coming into the season. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more and kind of why I have some concerns with them right there. But at this point in the college football season, I kind of got them at 3 and 4. Georgia does not move at number 5. People might get upset about this one, but Clemson moves ahead of Miami. They are now my number 6 team in the country. Do I think Clemson is a national championship contender? No. Do I think their demise, as it's been depicted in the college football space, is as big as people want to make it to be? Also, no. Like, I think this is a really good football team, not a national championship football team, but a good football team. They are a complete football team, I think. They are getting better on the offensive line, which I anticipated because they have a really fantastic offensive line coach, I think. Cade Klubnik is feeling more comfortable with the new weapons he has at his disposal, and that's been an upgrade for that offense. Defensively, they're starting to gel. Now, there are some injuries that are a little concerning that we got to monitor here. But I think when we talk about Clemson and Miami, for me, if they were to play today on a neutral site, I would give Clemson the advantage. I think they're the more complete team. I think they have a coaching edge. They don't have a quarterback edge. Cam Ward is a much better quarterback than Cade Klubnik. But I do think Clemson is the more complete team to compare to where Miami is currently. Now, that's not to say Miami can't get there. But if today they were to meet on a neutral field, I would have Clemson as a favorite. Ole Miss jumps from 10 to number 8. Fantastic data point this weekend. Can't wait to break down the Ole Miss LSU game. Bama and Tennessee do fall to 9 and 10 respectively. The Alabama offense is absolutely fantastic. It is still explosive. It's one of the best offenses in the country right now. The defense is the obvious concern. People have been talking about this a ton. For me, I think the reason I didn't drop them fully out of the top 12 even after that loss was because to Vanderbilt, which is absolutely embarrassing. But the reason I didn't drop them out is because there is still a talent profile defensively that makes you feel like they could get better. It's a young, like secondary, for example. There's some young pieces in there. They're not all on the same page yet. It leads to some blown coverages, which is unfortunate and sort of the issue they're facing right now on defense. But I think that's something that can get better with coaching. And I do like the defensive coaching staff. So I am projecting that they're going to get better defensively over the course of the season. They got to do it quick, though. But that's why I didn't drop them out of my top 12 even after that loss. Then we move on to Tennessee at 10, Iowa State at 11, and LSU at number 12 to round out the top 12. I really feel like outside of the top maybe 5 teams, things are so fluid right now in college football. I don't even really necessarily think there is an elite team Everybody can catch hands on any given Saturday. Everybody can lose this year. There's a lot of parity right now in the sport, which is something, if you've been a longtime listener of this show, I've been saying was going to happen with the expansion of the transfer portal, with NIL, the way the college football is sort of moving, the expanded playoffs, all of that was going to help drive parity in this sport. And I think that we're finally seeing that come to fruition here. And so we'll continue to monitor that. It'll be interesting, what this sport looks like as we continue to move forward in this new era of college football. There will be more and more changes, obviously, but I do think we're going to start seeing more balance across the board. But all right, let's talk about some college football games. Sorry, we had a little break in internet connection there. Right off the bat, we're going to talk South Carolina, Alabama. Line is at 21.5, over under 50.5. This is a get right spot for that Alabama defense. Like I was talking about when I was breaking down my top 12, I do think there are some redeemable traits in this Alabama defense. I think that they can improve and continue to get stronger. I think that overall, the young factor is playing an issue here, especially in the secondary, and that's leading to some blown coverages. They got to get better quickly, though. This South Carolina offense, though, is pretty stale. It is tough for this South Carolina offense to move the ball right now. Defensively, South Carolina, though, presents a very tough challenge. I think the Alabama offensive line is getting stronger week in and week out. It's got to stay healthy is the key part here. But as long as they maintain their health, this is a unit that is getting stronger. This is a unit that is getting better. Jalen Milroe is still incredibly explosive. Kalen DeBoer's offense is everything it was promised to be, and arguably more right now. They just got to get the defense cleaned up. And so this will be an interesting data point to see offensively, can they still maintain that explosiveness against a really good defensive front? And defensively for Alabama, can they, take care of an easy opponent? Can they not play with their food? Can they not have blown coverages in the back end? Can they improve their communication and simplify some things a little bit defensively so they can play faster? That's the real key here and the real data point that I'm looking for in this game. From there, we move to Penn State, USC. This line has been darting around. I got it earlier in the week when it was at 3. I did have Penn State at that point, but that's not where the line is currently. It's at 3.5. It's moved all the way up to 5 at one point. Now it's back down at 3.5. And that changes the dynamic here. As Penn State travels to the West Coast, this is an interesting matchup. Penn State, my concern for Penn State coming into this season was, could they improve their vertical passing attack? I had concerns because it didn't feel like they went out and got offensive talent that was really going to help that. And we have seen that be still a struggle area, explosiveness from a vertical passing standpoint. But it's still Drew Aller and this offense have been improving, and that's because of Andy Kolnicki, the upgrade at offensive coordinator. I am a huge Andy Kolnicki fan. I think he schemes things up fantastically, and I think this offense is going to continue to get better as they become more and more comfortable with each other. That is the quarterback and OC relationship. The concern, though, will still be, can they push the ball vertically when they need to get a big explosive play? We know that they can run the ball. They have a dynamic two-punch duo there. They need to stay healthy in that room, though, because with Singleton down, you saw that rush offense sort of fall off a little bit here. This is a USC defense, too, that while it is improved, there is an injury that is concerning, and that is the Eric Gentry injury, which may lead to him redshirting this season, which is a massive loss. He's been dealing with concussions issues right now. He is been playing fantastic. He adds an experience level to this defense. He's good at getting guys lined up appropriately. Like, he's been playing really well, and that would be a pretty tough loss for this USC team to absorb defensively because they already have some depth issues. Barry Alexander, redshirting and entering the transfer portal creates even though he wasn't a fantastic starter by any stretch of the imagination right now, he was a depth piece in an attrition sport. Depth is important if you have long-term goals. Defensively for Penn State, though, when I look at this defense, it's starting to get comfortable. Like I talked early in the season, how pressure was a concern. They are starting to feel more capable, I think, in this defensive scheme. Players are feeling more comfortable in their positions, in their roles within the defense. They're starting to play a little bit faster here. So I do think we are starting to see an uptick in the USC defense. That is going to be important to maintain. They are going to have to play with pressure here because I don't know if this secondary can hold up against the USC wide receiving core. That'll be an interesting battle and an interesting test for this team. I'm also going to be looking to see how well this USC offensive line can hold up. Uh, Moss has been, I think, good. Obviously, it's a downgrade from Caleb Williams. Everybody knows that, but I think he's been playing well. There are times where his ball placement is absolutely spectacular, and I think he can continue to improve, but the offensive line in front of him has got to give him time. If he has time, USC could have some advantages here. They could move the ball offensively. But if he doesn't, which I think is more likely going to be the case in this game, I do think Penn State's going to win this football game. At 3, I like Penn State a lot more than at 3.5. But let's see where that number kind of moves moving forward. Texas versus Oklahoma, Red River Showdown. Line is at 14.5, over under 49.5 as of recording. The name of the game is pain for Oklahoma. How much pain can you inflict on this Texas offense? Defensively, Oklahoma has to play their best game. And I think their best game has to specifically come in the red zone, because with this Texas offense, you have a fantastic offensive line. I think it could be the best offensive line in college football this season. This is going to be a massive data point to confirming that suspicion and that theory. But when the field gets short, can you step up and inflict pain on this Texas offense? We saw, for example, last year when the field consolidated, this Texas offense had some struggles. Can you do the same thing? Can you create some turnovers? Can you create field goal opportunities? Because offensively, Oklahoma has got nothing right now. Like, just literally zip. They're 129th in offensive success rate. It's bad. I know statistically it's a little bit better than Michigan, but it's not great. Now, Michael Hawkins does add a little bit of a chaos factor because of his mobility. So you do have to be mindful of that. But I do think this Texas defense and offense, I think it's the most complete team in college football. I really like the Texas secondary. I know they haven't been challenged yet, but I think the talent profile is really good. Can they stop the rush? Can you hold Oklahoma to under 20? And I think for Oklahoma, can you hold Texas to minimal scoring opportunities? Can you create some chaos and some turnovers from Quinn Ewers, who is coming back off that injury here? Can Texas gain some success running the ball in confidence? Like, there's just so many interesting dynamics, games within the games I'm going to be looking here to expand upon on the full season for Texas, because this is going to be a really nice, unique test. Michigan was a fantastic data point. I do believe that this game could turn out exactly like that one if Oklahoma isn't careful. They have to execute at a high level in condensed field situations. They have to be able to inflict pain. They got to get penetration. I do think that there are some wrinkles that Oklahoma could throw into this game. I don't like, that's also the other part here is, what coverages can you mix in? What exotic blitz packages can you mix in? Where can you? I lost power or internet there again. It keeps going down. Where can Oklahoma create some things that you haven't seen yet in their defensive scheme and their offensive scheme? Is there something they have up their sleeve that they can be creative? Brent Venables is a fantastic defensive mind. He's had Ewers' number last season a bit there. So can he mix in some coverages that he hasn't put on film yet? He's had time to prepare for this game, so that will be really interesting. All right, from the Red River Showdown, we move to Ohio State, Oregon. Line is at 3, over under 54. Ohio State making out the trip to Oregon. This is a fantastic game. This is the game everybody wants to talk about. This is the matchup that we all had circled when the college football schedule came out. You have two fantastic teams going at it. There are question marks, though, on both these football teams. I feel less questions about Ohio State and a little bit more questions from Oregon. This is an Oregon team that I had extremely high hopes for coming into the season. This was an Oregon team, when I looked at the talent profile of this roster, thought, man, this could be something special for Oregon this season, but they got to get some things right. And there was a little bit of projection in there. And I think the area that I missed on a little bit was the Dylan Gabriel factor. Now, I thought he would be a downgrade from Bo Nix coming into this offense, but I did also kind of think that his ball placement and accuracy in the short to intermediary part of the field was going to be helpful for Oregon here. I think he struggled a little bit early in the season. Part of that is a byproduct of that offensive line being banged up and injured to the point where you had a walk-on playing center. They've gotten a little bit healthier on the offensive line. It's gotten a little bit better. But I still have concerns about the explosiveness of this offense. We haven't really seen that yet. And this isn't one of those situations where I can go, I think they've been holding things back, like I'm going to say about Ohio State here in a minute, because they've been in really tough games. They've had to kind of show some things early in the season than I think they initially wanted to. Their wide receivers are also a little bit undersized, I think. They rely on their speed and shiftiness. So for Ohio State, this defense versus this offense, Ohio State's defense has not seen anything like this offense yet this season. This is a really big test for this Ohio State defense. I'm interested in how aggressive Jim Knowles is going to be against this Oregon offense, because I think the better plan of attack here is to not be all that aggressive, to allow them to kind of dink and dunk it down the field and get short field opportunities, because then you can start to be physical with these wide receiver group. They want you to be aggressive. They want you to be so aggressive that you play out of position, because they are speedy and shifty in the open field, and they want to utilize that to their advantage. But if you can consolidate the field and get them into, goal line situations or into the red zone, that is when the advantage starts to shift, I think, to Ohio State, and where they can be a more physically imposing defense compared to this Oregon offense. And that'll be an interesting dynamic here. Can there be some explosiveness from this Oregon offense? Because we haven't really seen that up to this point. When we flip the side, though, Ohio State's offense versus this defense, this is where I think I've been a little bit more disappointed. I projected this Oregon defense to be better because of the talent profile they have on the roster defensively. They have underperformed to my expectations. Now, Boise State is better than I initially anticipated, and that's the data point I'm really leaning on here, because that's the best offense they have faced. And while it's not the most comparable to Ohio State has a two-headed monster in their backfield. Boise State has a single-headed monster in Aston Genty, and you saw Aston Genty have success. You saw Boise State be able to build off their run game and have success against this Oregon defense, and that's the concern coming into this one. Because while Will Howard, might be questions about his passing ability from an elite standpoint. He's a good quarterback. He gives you a man advantage in the running game aspect. He can be physical downhill. There are still some question marks about his arm talent, but he's got an incredibly talented wide receiver core. It's arguably the best 1-2 punch from a wide receiver core. They have arguably the best backfield in a 1-2 punch capacity. There is so much talent on this team. It is up to him to play mistake-free football, to just get the ball into his playmakers' hands. And that is where the interesting question comes, because we haven't seen a ton from this Ohio State offense schematically. There haven't been wrinkles that we've really seen Chip Kelly, who's one of the most creative play callers in college football, throw in, because they haven't had to. They can play vanilla football and just beat the crap out of teams that are on their schedule right now. But this is where we get to see the creativity. And I do think the OC quarterback relationship is stronger on the Ohio State side than the Oregon side. I don't know if Dylan Gabriel is fully comfortable yet in this Oregon offense. I do get the sense that Will Howard is comfortable in this Ohio State offense. And I am very curious about what Chip Kelly might have up his sleeves, because at the end of the day, Chip Kelly left head coaching because he just wanted to draw up cool plays and call an offense that's exciting. This is his first time to showcase that in a hostile environment. This will be the toughest game that Will Howard has played in up to this point as far as environments go. It's going to be absolutely fantastic and electric. If this number at 3, I like Ohio State more. At 3.5, I start to like Oregon because of the road factor, because of the home field factor. I just wish Oregon was more consistent in their play. I still think they're a very good football team, but I feel like I have more questions about this Oregon team than I have answers right now compared to Ohio State. And I know Ohio State defensively hasn't played an offense without a pulse. Offensively, though, we saw them play an Iowa team that is very good defensively and play well. And so I do think this is the moment for Ohio State to get a statement win this season, to show what they are as a football team, to show that they are ready for the big stage, because they are competing for a national championship. They are all in this season. So this will be a very big moment for them. Old Miss LSU line is at 3.5, over under 63.5. When you see those two teams, you think over, right? I kind of am thinking the under right now a little bit on this matchup. Death Valley, LSU has a home field advantage like few others in college football. Since 2000, I saw this clip. This stat comes courtesy of a clip that I saw of Chip Patterson over at CBS. So thank you for this stat here. But since 2000, LSU at home at night has played 123 games. They are 108-15 in those games. Brian Kelly is perfect. There is not an environment like Death Valley in college football. It is one of the most unique experiences out there. You get all those Cajuns going all day and they get into that stadium at night. It is a ruckus environment. It is hostile. And you have an Ole Miss team coming in that needs to play well, because I do think this could be a college football playoff eliminator game just based on what is left on both these teams' schedules. You have to win this game if you want a shot at the college football playoff. Ole Miss, defensively, incredibly talented. They have yet to see an offense like this LSU offense. Garrett Nussmeier is starting to be in full control of this offense. I do wonder if Chip Kelly is going to apply a more methodical approach offensively, try to get the run game going so that you can limit the Ole Miss offensive possessions, because Lane wants as many cracks as possible at this thing. It's the way his kind of play sheet lines up. Ole Miss is always better when they have more offensive possessions because they get in a bit of a groove. I have questions about Ole Miss too, because the Harris injury and what these other talented individuals on offense can do, because they haven't really been playing up to expectation. Defensively, though, LSU's offense has yet to see a defense quite like Ole Miss's talent profile. The line of scrimmage battle is going to be fantastic. That is NFL talent on NFL talent as far as Ole Miss's defensive line versus LSU's offensive line. That is a game within a game worth getting a bucket of popcorn for and sitting down on your couch ready to watch. It is going to be an absolute battle in the trenches. And they're going to need that to help protect a little bit of this Ole Miss secondary against this LSU passing attack, I think. Offensively, I also think that Ole Miss might similarly implore a little bit more of a methodical offensive scheme, because even though they want to be a little bit more on tempo, even though they want a lot of cracks at the pinata, they also know what's opposing them in LSU. And LSU, if they want to play up tempo, can, and that could be very dangerous for the Ole Miss defense. So I do think this is going to be a more methodical game, and that's why I'm kind of feeling it under here. Iowa State versus West Virginia, line is at 3, over under 53. This is a fantastic the Big 12 has got some fantastic games this weekend. Iowa State is playing great football. West Virginia is playing good football at times. Let's talk about the matchups, because this Iowa State defense is the one area that I have question marks, and they are going to face a West Virginia offense that, if you're not careful, can get up on your ass. They can run the football. Garrett Green is best when West Virginia's offense is simple. It is, here's your read. If it's not there, go be an athlete in space, or we're taking a deep shot on this play. Like, when you simplify it to that amount, he's fantastic, and you can run the ball. And that's where Iowa State has to be careful. I don't really know how great this Iowa State defense. I'm sorry, folks. I keep losing internet here. So I apologize for this disruption in this podcast recording. But Iowa State offensively, I really like them right now. Like, this wide receiver duo in Higgins and Noel is absolutely fantastic. It is flying way under the radar in college football. And that could be a very big issue for West Virginia, who has had some secondary concerns. You also look at Rocco Beck, top 30 in QBR so far this season. In his last 9 games, in 8 of those games, he's thrown for at least 2 touchdowns. He is having success moving the football through the air. He plays similar to a Brock Purdy type. Like, they seem to just be growing these guys in labs. I don't really know what's going on over in Iowa State, but it's really nice for their program. West Virginia is 116th in passing success rate defensively. It's not good. Like, this is an area where Iowa State could really have its way with West Virginia, and is the concern. Like, for West Virginia, you want to control this game on the ground, get your rush game going, allow Garrett Green to take his shots here and there. You don't want to get game script out of this game by having Iowa State just kind of nuking you through the passing game. Like, they got to be really solid on their P's and Q's in this one if they want to have a shot. And stay balanced and try to take advantage of an Iowa State defense that's linebacking core is banged up, that wants to just kind of drop back in coverage and let you kind of, explode on yourself a little bit here. So if West Virginia can stay really balanced, I think they have an opportunity in this game, but they just got to be really careful. It is a fine line to walk in this one. K-State versus Colorado, really nice game here. I'm interested in this one. I think this could be absolutely fantastic matchup. The line has moved to 3.5. Over under sitting at 56.5. K-State has got a lightning and thunder duo in Giddens and Edwards. And then you mix in Avery's legs. Absolutely fan freaking tastic. The concern for Colorado, I think if you're a Colorado fan, is you play a lot of man defensively. That's a lot of backs turned to the quarterback. It'll be interesting to see if they change their defensive philosophies, change their defensive scheme to account for the fact that Avery Johnson, if he decides to take off with the ball, is very elusive. He is a slippery guy. And so I think while K-State might not have as many design runs for him, he's still going to be a massive factor in the run game. And we have seen Colorado struggle with mobile quarterbacks. We saw it in the North Dakota State game. We saw it to an effect in the Baylor game. So they have to be really careful, I think, in the way they approach this situation defensively, because they have had an uptick defensively. They are getting better. They're getting Shiloh back. We'll see what his reintroduction into this defense looks like. I want to preface this too. I don't think Shiloh is a bad player. I do have concerns about the way the Colorado defense utilizes him and what positions they put him in, thinking he is sort of better than he necessarily is. Because I identified early in the season, I thought him and Trevor Woods were pretty big liabilities when it came to pass coverage. And I think that it is not necessarily a coincidence that with those two guys, Shiloh being out for injury and Trevor Woods seeing a more reduced role and eventually redshirting, that defensively they've gotten a little bit better. And it's not because Shiloh is a bad player, but it's because they changed their defensive philosophies a little bit and they just don't have a guy roaming around free in their back end blowing coverages. Because if you play him in the right scheme, I think he's good, but I don't know if they're utilizing his skill set the best. I think they might be asking him to do too much. And that could be a potential weakness for Colorado here. Defensively, though, K-State, I mean, you have to be able to manufacture pressure if you want to win this game. Because if you allow Shadur Sanders to sit back there with the weapons he has, Colorado's going to pick apart K-State. It's not even going to be close. They have to generate pressure, which they have struggled to do thus far. It was the question coming into this season about K-State for me. When I talked about them in the Big 12 preview show, I talked about, who could be the guy that could sustain and generate pressure. Do they have guys that could do it consistently? Because I worry about the back end. Now, they're 50th in passing defense success rate, so not terrible. A little bit better than a mid-tier team. If they can generate pressure, this can change for K-State. This is going to be an awesome game and a fun one to watch. All right, let's wrap this up with some picks. I like Pitt -3. I like Texas if you can get rid of the hook. So if 14 flashes on the board, I like Texas at 14, but since it's not available, it won't count towards the record. Make sure you're checking our social feeds because if it comes available, I'll tweet it out. I like Oregon at +3. I like Penn State, I got them at 3. If that flashes a 3, fantastic. I like the under. That is a bet I am placing in LSU Ole Miss, and I like Syracuse -3 right now in their game. Might tweet out some additional picks, so make sure you're following us at Trophy Kids Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, The Trophy Kid for myself and my content. But hopefully you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week. Check out the NFL show out now, wherever you get your podcast from. And as always, peace.